Welcome, everybody, on the How to Make 2000 a Month Passive Income Masterclass. I know as I'm talking here, some of you guys watch the recording, which is great. Shout out to you guys watching this down the road in the future. Uh, Feel free to comment, ask questions, even if you're watching on the YouTube link, whatever it might be. Please feel free to ask questions. For those of you live, I can see now you guys are popping in as well. Go ahead and just enter, just so I know who I'm talking to that's actually here in front of me, face to face. Well, not face to face. You know what I mean. You're actually here now. Go ahead and just pipe in. Just say where you're from. Love just to hear it. It does take a matter of probably 30 seconds or more for your responses to come in. So definitely, as you're putting in those comments, even as you're putting in questions along the way, please do so I can address them at the end of this masterclass. So I do have a presentation I'm going to cover here and give you guys because it keeps me on focus, keeps me grounded and centered, and make sure that we get this done as efficiently as possible. But teaching you as much as I can, especially about how to generate that 2,000 a month of passive income. So David from Texas, the Republic of Texas, welcome. Hopefully we're not seeing the future where all of a sudden Texas is its own country. Maybe that's what you want, but I know sometimes I'm kind of tempted to defect from the United States from here and there. Although I love being American, that's for sure. But yeah, there are times you're like, oh my goodness, this place is crazy, isn't it? So welcome, David. Anybody else? Definitely put that in. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my presentation right now so we can get into this. So those of you guys that don't know me, I know sometimes I'm new. Some of you guys, I know some of you watching right now probably have watched, seen my stuff over and over. Maybe you follow my Money Ripples podcast. If you haven't already, please do so. Clifford from Tampa, welcome as well. But definitely, there's a lot of things that happen along the way that, I'll just tell you, like finances and money, and especially like figuring out how I was able to retire twice by the time I was 39. That's a big deal. I'll kind of go into my story here about why I'm the anti-financial advisor, why I actually preach against traditional financial planning and teach people really how to generate cash flow and passive income now versus waiting 30 or 40 or more years until you actually have some sort of freedom. Justin from Smoky Loveland, Colorado. Definitely the forest fires have been crazy out here. James from Georgia, welcome as well. So today, guys, if you're really looking for ways to how do you create an extra 2,000 a month without starting a side business or a job. No, there's no Etsy shop or promotion that way or telling you to start an Amazon store. Reggie, welcome from Georgia as well. Now, you're not gonna have to do that. You don't want to get roped into some pyramid or get rich quick kind of crap that's out there today. That's not what we're showing here. And even better, not even how you're going to sacrifice 30 or 40 years of life just so you can gamble your money away in 401ks, IRAs, crypto, and whatever else, hoping that you'll get rich quick. That just does not happen. What I'm talking about today is not get rich quick, but it's get rich more certain than almost anything else I've ever seen in my whole life. And I've been in this space for well over 20 years. I'll tell you that this masterclass is going to show you how you can do it faster. Yeah, you're not going to have to sacrifice and work hard your entire life to barely have enough to get by like most people are right now. And you're not going to have to gamble your money in stock markets, crypto, or anything else. And this is something that like not just me, but many of our clients have done as well. That's what I'm going to talk about today, reveal how we did it and why it's actually easier than you might think. Now, we're going to talk about ways like where you can find money to invest. That's one place people will say, yeah, but where does it come from, right? By the way, shout out to those of you guys. I know some of you have actually hired us recently or are about to hire us in our consulting program. Welcome to you guys as well. I'm going to talk about my favorite investments that your financial advisor does not want you to know about because they do not get paid if they give you this kind of advice and this kind of education. In fact, you're probably going to learn more about investing than you probably ever did from a financial advisor. I'll tell you that much. And then I'm going to tell you what it takes to become financially independent, not just 2,000 a month, but even financially independent in the next 10 plus years. Some of our clients have done it within a year. Some of them take at least 10 to 15 years. It really depends. But the one thing I can tell you for certain is that it doesn't have to take 30 or 40 or more years to do it. And here's kind of like the secret wealth wheel, as I call it, right? Of how this really works. One, it's like a 1-2 punch. You gotta understand there's principles and there's strategies, right? Everybody wants the strategies, but the problem is that we are in a very strategy heavy environment. There's lots of education on strategies, yet it still isn't working. It's not about what you know. It's not even about what you do with what you know, but it's about doing the right things, right? And using that, of course, we talk about max ROI, infinite banking. We're not talking about that as a big focus today. However, I'd actually just told Danielle before we went live here, I'll probably do another masterclass, probably about a week or so, on this very topic about how you set up this max ROI, infinite banking, where you can get your investment money to pay you twice. And then we talk about passive income investments. And I mean truly passive investments, not like, hey, I'm going to start a brand new real estate business on the side, but it's going to be like a full time or at best part time job to generate that kind of income. This is something I'm talking about that's truly passive, but you got to make these things all work together in harmony for you to get the best results possible. And so yes, we are not going to talk about how to like start your own Etsy shop. I love this meme because we're not going to like give you all the social media crap that you see out there about passive income when it's really just selling you on some other ebook. And the truth is, guys, you can actually get plenty of information, plenty of knowledge just from watching this masterclass here. It doesn't mean you'll have everything, because obviously every one of you is in a different position or a situation in life. I'll try to address as many types of situations so maybe you can figure out what might apply best to you. But as a disclaimer, I am not giving investment advice. I'm not telling you should invest in certain places, just so that you don't try to sue my pants off of me because you think that I was giving you a recommendation when I really wasn't. I was just giving a lot of examples, okay? But it is enough information. You could probably take it and apply it yourself. Do it yourself, or even hire guys like us to do it for you, or help you do it with you. Now, this is not something where it's like, trying to make passive income while you sleep. Although I love passive income while you sleep, like Warren Buffett says, if you don't make money while you sleep, you work until you die. That literally does not mean you have to be like this YouTuber where he would let people make loud noises to wake him up and get paid for that. This is not what you're going to be doing here. So good news is you get a good night's rest and you can make passive income. And you don't have to work 12 hours a day working on it either. Here's how most people tell you to do it. They tell you to take your 9-to-5 income, fund your side hustle, then your side hustle fuels your investments, then eventually have your money to replace your 9-to-5 income. What if we just skip that step? No, I'm not opposed to side hustles. If you're doing it, awesome. Okay, I think side hustles can be a great way to increase your income. Here's the thing: you don't have to create a side hustle to fuel your investments. Sometimes you might have just enough to be able to do enough that you need to be able to do that. So again, I'm not bashing on those people that do that. I just bash on the idea that it has to look or feel so hard. I'm not saying it's get rich quick. I'm not saying it's easy. It does take some time and it takes some very intentional effort to do it right. But you definitely do not have to sacrifice your entire life for the next 10, 15, 20 years to then finally quit your job. I don't really believe in that. Here's a cool thing too. If you go to our website, moneyripples.com, there's actually a passive income calculator. So if you say, hey, I've got money, how do I invest it? You can actually go to our website, moneyripples.com. There's an income calculator right there that if you fill it out completely, every question you got to fill out. If you don't, and I'm going to ask questions like things you'll mention here, right? Like, not just your income and expenses, just monthly income and expenses, but also what's your passive income goal? How much do you actually want to create per month? How much do you have in savings, just liquid savings? How much do you have in old 401ks and IRAs, not current 401ks, because those are locked up with your company, but old ones that you can actually access, and other types of investments. Maybe your crypto, or if you have gold and silver on the side, or things like that. You put in those numbers. If you have rentals or real estate, we ask you a few questions about that. It takes you literally a couple minutes to fill out at most, and you can get a pretty accurate number of how much passive income you could create in the next 12 months. So that's a challenge I'm going to give everybody on here to do. You don't have to do it right now, but definitely I would say definitely do that by after we finish this up here. And as I mentioned, because I know many of you just jumped on here, we are going to do some Q&A, ask questions along the way. I will answer those questions. Just so you know, most people don't get this stuff. The Dave Ramsey of the world, although he's done it in his own life, he doesn't teach you to do it himself, right? I'm just going to teach you the very things that help guys like him get rich as well, where he's now arguably worth about $200 million, more or less. He thinks it's 600 or 700 million. Other people really challenge that number. Either way, the guy's worth at least a few $100 million, and he did it by doing these strategies we're talking about today. And he even did it in a way that was harder, that you could even do it easier than he did. And I'll tell you, my inspiration for today is really my dad. My dad was the kind of guy, he worked his tail off, right? He worked himself so hard. There's the link to the passive income calculator, by the way. But, my dad was the kind of guy, like he was kind of I wouldn't say he's like he would say he's frugal. We would say he's cheap, right? He was the guy who was like the penny pinching saver. He buys everything on sale. I literally have scars on the roof of my mouth because he had to buy cereal in bulk And one year, one of those years, I think it was about 7 or 8 years old, was Cap'n Crunch. You guys know how it is. If you eat enough Cap'n Crunch, the roof of your mouth starts really hurting, right? I had it for a year straight, all because it was on sale. That's the kind of guy my dad was. He'd always say things like, "Hey, we can't afford this. We think money grows on trees. I'm not made of money, you know." I don't know if any of you guys are on live right now. If that was your parents, telling you they can't afford things and money doesn't grow on trees, go ahead and type in and let me know I'm not alone. But my dad was that kind of saver. And the thing that really struck me is that as I was growing up, he would also say things like, Chris, my job will literally kill me. I think I'll die working. I'll probably have to work till I die. And I remember that impacted me to the point where I didn't want to have that happen to myself. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to live a different life. I'm going to go to college. And so I went to college. And it didn't take me long. After a few years, I realized as I started to look at real life, and I'm one of those people, I would like to look at real life, real results, right? And as I was looking at real life, I said, man, I noticed these people are kind of getting stuck in these 9 to 5 jobs, just like my dad is, and they have a college education too. Well, maybe my secret is to become a business consultant. I'm going to consult businesses. I'm going to become my own boss, so to speak. And I'm going to be an independent consultant because that was like my favorite professors were the ones that were actually in the real field as independent consultants. So I was going to do that too. But I figured I should have real life business experience. So I actually dropped out of college with one class to go. I figured I'd just go back a year later, but I wanted some more experience. So then by the time I got my MBA, then I would actually have some real world experience to go with that book experience. Well, I did that. I dropped out of college, was trying to find some business. And the first one that came up was being a financial advisor, not knowing they take anybody off the street as long as you have really, you're not a criminal. You don't have a criminal record or background, and you can pass a test, which I could easily do because I had like a 3.8, almost 3.9 GPA in college. So passing the test was a piece of cake. Funny story though, I actually didn't study for the test very well. And so I actually failed my first exams, financial exams, like 4 times by missing by 1%. So finally I decided to study and crammed, and then I passed it just fine. But I learned I couldn't wing it like I did in college where I didn't have to study. But anyways, I passed the test and that was it. I was a financial advisor. Now I'm a financial expert, which in truth wasn't true. But I did that for several years. Loved teaching people about money and the hopes of freedom. And I was drinking my own Kool-Aid. I was saving in mutual funds and everything else. And then 4 years later, my dad said, "Chris, when are you going to become my financial advisor? When are you going to help me out?" So I did. I sat down with him, and I expected that. Okay, I'm going to help my dad retire now. This was the thing I was hoping for. Because I was hoping for as a financial advisor, if I could give him at least a few years of his life back, that would be worth it. If he'd have to die working, that would be worth it to me. Well, I sat down, and this is like in 2005. So we just recovered from Y2K. The market's coming back up again. And I look at his finances and I said, "Dad, even though you paid off your house and everything in 18 years, you're totally debt free, and you've been stuffing money in your 401k with the match. Despite all that, if you want to retire today at 61 years old, you better hope you die in 5 years because that's when you're going to run out of money." He said, "That's not what I expected to hear out of your mouth. I was hoping to hear, how do I retire sooner than later because I'm tired of my job? They're just keep, working me harder for less pay." And I said, "I don't know, Dad. You did everything right from what I teach as a financial advisor." For a few weeks, I was pretty bothered by this. And finally, when the student's ready to teach her peers, I decided to call up a friend of mine that I hired to be a financial advisor, but then he left to go do real estate investing. And I called him up expecting to hear that maybe he wasn't doing so well. He wanted to come back to work for me again as a financial advisor. I got the opposite response. He told me, he said, "Chris, my life is amazing right now. My dad and I have actually partnered on some real estate deals, and we've now doubled his income as a professor at the local university." I said, "Well, wait. You've doubled his income, and this only been like 4 or 5 months? Come on, this is too good to be true. There's no way that's possible." He said, "Chris, well, how many of your clients are truly financially free where they don't worry about money?" He was getting pretty pissed at me at this point because I was challenging him and telling him stocks are better than real estate. Of course, I'm a financial advisor, right? And he's like, "Well, how many of your clients are truly financially free where they don't worry about money?" I said, "Well, none. They all worry about money. Even the retired ones still worry about running out of money too soon." "Okay, Chris, well, what about this? How many of you guys as financial advisors are financially free, not off the commissions, but actually doing these investments? How many of you are financially free off these investments?" For those of you on live here, type in if you actually wanted to ask the financial advisor that same question, like, how much money are you actually making on these investments? Can you actually retire? That's the question he was asking me. Well, I thought about it and I said, there's probably about 100 guys in our office, and I would say maybe none. Some of these guys have been working here since the late 1970s, and they still can't retire. Chris, there's your problem. Okay, good to know. So, anyways, I started to drink the Kool-Aid. I started to listen to him. I said, "Listen, I'm open. Give me some more things." I started listening to these guys. I did a radio show locally here in Utah, and I even read some extra Robert Kiyosaki books, extra Rich Dad Poor Dad books like "Who Took My Money," which rips into why mutual funds stink. And next thing I know, I realized I could not be in integrity knowing what I now knew, knowing that the stock market didn't return as well as I claimed it would, or anybody else claims it does. Also knowing that the evidence was clients that I've worked with, even ones I inherited that had decades of experience with financial advisors, still could not retire financially free. Yes, they had money, but it didn't mean jack squat if it couldn't turn into real income. You know what I'm saying here? So, anyways, that's kind of what woke me up. That's why I quit being a financial advisor, vowed never to teach about money again. I know, ironic, I'm here right now. But I thought I would just do, mortgage. I'd be a mortgage broker at the time because it was 2006. Of course, mortgage brokers were a dime a dozen then. And I'd be a mortgage broker and teach ballroom dancing on the side. And I was doing that, but I wanted to know what these guys knew about real estate. I started getting into it myself, where later that next year, I was able to retire myself because I only needed 3,500 a month, and I was making between 4 and 5 grand a month passively as a 28-year-old. And that blew my mind that was even possible. And I'm here to tell you guys, like, that's the thing, is that this stuff works. And by the way, it didn't just work once for me, because when the recession hit, because I started gambling a little bit more, I got overconfident, thinking I was just I was going to say the cat's meow. I mean, that just is the dorkiest phrase ever, isn't it? I was going to say the cat's meow. But whatever you want to say, I just thought I was hot stuff, didn't I? I thought it was amazing. I thought I couldn't lose when it came to real estate. And so when the recession hit, I did start to lose. Plus, I started a new business that was starting to go under. Business I started with a guy named Garrett Gunderson. Some of you guys may have heard of him before. And the next thing you know, I'm going broke. I went over $1 million in debt. And still, despite that, not having any money and having a horrible credit score, I was still able to dig back out of that hole by the end of 2016 to be once again financially independent the second time by the time I was 39 years old. So I'm just here to tell you guys that this stuff works. And it didn't just work for me, but it's worked for many of our clients. And so I want to get into that. But understand, you've got some challenges. You've got some headwinds coming your way that you need to be careful of. First and foremost, one, the stock market's at all-time highs right now. It's overinflated, this AI tech boom. The stock market's going crazy right now, yet the economy is not. Understand what I just said. The stocks are going crazy right now, but the economy is not going crazy. In fact, there are a lot of signs right now that people have already spent all of their COVID savings that they had generated. Now people are starting to go into credit card debt more than ever. But the problem is that interest rates are higher than they've been for decades. So people are drowning right now. And maybe this is you. Maybe you feel in the pinch. Maybe that's why you want an extra 2,000 a month, because you're feeling the pinch right now. And I'm telling you, it's only gets worse. Only gets worse. And if you think the stock market will keep going up when people are going broke, think again. When that starts to become more reality, when mainstream media finally stops lying to you and tells you the truth about what's really going on, or instead of burying these articles in the back end, which, by the way, credit card debt is over $1 trillion right now. People are now can't even afford cars or the houses that they're affording right now. It's getting crazy. Yet the media is kind of putting that on the back burner, and they're going to talk more about Kamala Harris or Trump instead. That's the thing you got to be careful of. And then you got people out there like Dave Ramsey telling you, hey, if you just save $100 a month for 40 years, you'll have $1.176 million. So you got all these financial pundits giving you this advice saying, if you just do this, you'll be a millionaire. Here's the problem, guys. One, Dave Ramsey doesn't know how to do math, because I put in those same numbers, $100 a month for 40 years at 12% interest. That's what he's assuming, 12% interest. Notice it's $200,000 off. The guy can't even do freaking math on a basic calculator, for one. So you don't even hit $1 million doing what he says. But two, guess what? Here's the problem. The market actually only has returned 8.4% average in the last 30 years. That's the real market return, not the average that they claim, the real market return. What happens if you put 8.4% or even just 8%? Because most people don't even get 8.4%. Just so you know, I've tracked this for many, many years. It's usually between 7 and 8% for the long-term average. But because we're at all-time highs, and 1994 was like a little recessionary low, there was a great, now we have this bigger than average like bigger than typical average that we're seeing right now. Um, you know, and so you put that 8% in here, and look, you only got like 300,000. That's a problem, guys. You're expecting to have almost 1.2 million, yet you have less than $400,000. You think that's going to affect your expectations for the future? The problem is he'll be long dead before you even get there, so it won't matter anyways. You can't sue him for it because he can say whatever he wants and he gets away with it, right? And yes, Paul brings up a good point. When you talk about the cost there, like there's about a 0.5% to 1% cost. That's exactly true. Because I'll tell you this, guys. I actually just talked to somebody yesterday. They said, well, we've been talking to different financial advisors. The one that are currently using charges us 1.36%. By the way, this 1.36% is on top of the other fees that mutual funds charge. So this person is charging them to manage their money after they already pay fees on their money. This is why most people never even get 7 or 8% average on their mutual funds. But on top of this, here's the other problem, guys, is that this was like 1.36%. They're like, yeah, this best guy is only going to charge us 1%. I said, you have $740,000. You have to pay them $7,400 a year every year, whether they make money or not. And if they do actually make money, that fee just goes up. If you lose money, they still get paid. Isn't that kind of robbery? Let's just say that money went down from 740,000 down to 500,000, right? He still gets paid 5,000 a year for them to lose money, and he doesn't do anything. He just goes and throws his money in the market. He just lets them ride the waves like they would normally. Guys, it's just corrupt out there, right? Those are the big challenges. Here's what's even worse. Dave Ramsey, people are like going to him advice. This woman actually says here, and it's hard for me to read it because it's so small on my screen, but she just said like, hey, I've been following your advice since I was 18. Now I'm broke. What should I do next? Hello, if you follow somebody's advice and you go broke doing it, why would you ask them for more advice? But this is what people do all the time. And yes, David, you're right. Taxes, we didn't even talk about taxes coming out, right? That's another, well, actually, I'm going to talk about that in a second. We got inflation that's way worse than what the government's proclaiming it to be. They're saying it's getting under control, but you and I both know that we're each and every month, every year, things are getting more expensive. I mean, heck, hiring a contractor to come out. I don't know if you guys have tried to hire anybody for working on your house or even like lawn services. Everything's at least doubled. Yet most of our incomes, if you're not a business owner, especially if you're an employee, your income hasn't doubled, not likely. And here's the other challenge, like what David said, taxes, right? Do you think that the government's going broke? And right now, because the interest rates are so high on the debt they're having to pay, because it went up just like it went up on all of us, don't you think they're going to have to do something to make up for that so we don't go bankrupt as a country? Yeah. Where do you think they go? Taxes. And guys, this is a problem because where's the best place they can go to? They can go to your retirement plans. They can go after your own income and go after just about anything. So are there ways we can do it even better? Are there some tax advantage ways that even the government and the politicians use themselves? Which, of course, some of these things like in real estate, you could actually do. Not to mention things like life insurance, which is a whole nother topic too. And here's the problem ultimately, guys, that with everything going on, right? Taxes and inflation and everything else going up, and that pinch, that stress it's creating for you doesn't just affect you, it affects your family. You start creating a legacy of scarcity. That to me is the scariest thing because now your kids start to learn from you what's going on. Even if you don't talk about money, just so you know, if you don't talk about money, the world will, and the world definitely doesn't have very favorable things to say about money, do they? We got to break this pattern. You got to show them a different way. I've had several people that said, listen, we hired you because we not just want freedom for ourselves, but we want to give our kids a hope for a brighter future. Not so they can inherit it, but if they can learn the things that I wish I knew 20, 30 years ago. I can't tell you how many times people said, I wish I met you 20 or 30 years ago. And the truth is, better meet me now than 20 or 30 years from now, isn't it? So they want the same for their kids too. Imagine how much better their lives could be if you didn't, follow this traditional pattern of Americans, right? And this is where cash flow creates freedom. This is the big thing that you need to understand. And you can do it. This is actually easier than most people think. Now, I will say this. Here's who it's not for. If you're in a position where right now, you're in a position where you don't have any money, I will say this. You will not create passive income. If you do not have money to work for you, you will have to work for it. That's still true. I know people will try to tell you that, hey, you can do this stuff with no money down or no money out of pocket. You can, but it always requires time and energy. And I hope you guys don't mind it. Can I actually just be honest? I don't want to be like the rest of social media, the people on there telling you like, oh, you can do this, and it takes no money, no effort, and you'll just sit on the couch and sit on a beach, and money just rolls in without you doing a jack squat, which is total crap. And then they, of course, try to sell you on some big program to do that. This is not true, guys. Like, there are ways to make good leveraged income. I think there's ways to do it systematically where you can do it easier than just working a typical, trading time for dollars, right? Or trading dollars for time, so to speak. But I will say this, that if you don't have cash, then you're not going to create passive income. It's going to have to be active income, even if it means you do get that side hustle, wherever it might be. But I'm here to tell you, even if this is your case, even if you don't have money, now if you have money, great, that you're going to see lots of great ways to apply this. But if you don't, there's still hope here, because we have things like cash flow secrets. You can find our website at moneyripples.com, that I actually talk about how I was able to dig out of that $1 million debt hole, how I was able to essentially create money from nothing. And it does require some effort, right? It does require ways to control your finances better. I think everybody actually, and everybody, even our own clients, they still go through the same kind of program. But this cash flow secrets is kind of a more affordable way to say, here's, it's like $97 online or something like that. Easy way to be able to figure out how you can free up potentially up to maybe a couple $1,000s a month or so. So we've had even people that have been flat broke find at least a few $100s a month from that. And so one of the best ROIs you can get from an investment, in my opinion, especially if you're trying to find money, that's a good route to take it. Now, like I said, the Warren Buffett quote says, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. This is why we need multiple streams of passive income. I just recorded a podcast yesterday. It's going to come out next week. So you get a little snippet here from that. But I actually Googled, I was like, hey, let's find ways to create passive income. Well, it came up with this Forbes article, gave the basic crappy advice, like, live on a budget, pay off your debt, save money, all that kind of generic vanilla stuff you always get. And then number 6 of the 7 points was create multiple streams of income. I'm thinking, this is great. And you know what their advice was for multiple streams of income? Get a job. Get a freaking job. Like, we couldn't think of that ourselves, right? You got to get a freaking job. I'm like, where's the multiple streams of income? Guys, that's not going to be my advice here today. I'm going to teach you something much different than that, okay? But I'm telling you, you're going to have to switch your mindset. You cannot think like you've always thought, or you'll keep getting results you've always got. And I didn't mean to make that rhyme, but it just did this time. Dang it, I just did it again. All right, anyways, I didn't try to do that, but it is kind of like taking the Matrix red pill, right? Is that we really are trying to, you have to shift the way you think about money so that money will work differently for you. And here's the big thing that I teach a lot of times for our clients is that there are really 3 money mindsets. There's spenders, savers, and stewards. 2 of these are in scarcity, and 2 of these will remain broke the rest of their lives. Only one has a hope of freedom, and it's not the saver. The spenders and the savers are the ones that will remain broke their entire lives, while the stewards are the actual ones that create all the wealth. And that's why I show this curve here. The steward is in the middle, while the spenders and the savers are on the extremes. All the wealth and all the money that's collected is there. Granted, yes, there might be a little bit more money with the savers, but the problem is that it's not about how much money you have, it's how much money that money pays you. That's why cash flow, passive income is so important. It's about the income that it creates for you, not the amount of money you have. Does that make sense? Who cares if you have $10 million if it only pays you $10 a month, right? If that's all you got, you wouldn't care about having $10 million. You would rather have $1 million that paid you $100,000 a month, right? Or something like that. You'd much rather have that. Heck, I'd even take $10,000 a month, or even $1,000 a month is better than $10 a month. That's the thing. It's always about cash flow. Now, spenders, we get it. Like it's easy come, easy what? Go, right? They make money. They often make good money. In fact, many business owners we work with, and we work with a lot of savers primarily, but we get a lot of business owners that come as spenders. They make great money, but they don't know where it's all going. And so a lot of times plugging those money leaks helps them to be able to hold on to more of the cash and be able to use it to invest too. And so spenders, that's the problem. They always have to keep hustling to make more money. They ignore expenses, but they love to look at their income, and they often make the best income. Savers are hyper focused on the expenses, what they have to pay. In fact, they have to pay any bills. Their life is never good until all bills are gone, which doesn't work unless you want to live out in the wilderness, wiping with leaves and stuff, to put it bluntly, that's kind of what happens for savers. You can never get to the point where you never spend money, but they hate spending money. They love saving, but they don't ever have an end date for saving. They can never save enough. They can never pay off their debt fast enough or get rid of the bills enough. There's always just never enough. That kind of scarcity will never give you freedom. My dad was that saver, right? He would try to save and save and save. And even all that saving still, even though I told him it wouldn't be enough, especially from a traditional financial planning role, still, he was a great saver, but it was just never enough. That's where the steward differs. The steward takes the best of the spender and the saver and they put it together for themselves because the steward knows that money is meant to be used, right? Like the spender will use money, but it just doesn't come back. Spenders want to use money in a way that comes back to them, right? That it multiplies, it increases, it generates something of real value in their life and the lives of others. They want to multiply their blessings. They want to multiply their assets. They want to make sure that they can create more increase in their lives so that as a result, they don't just bless themselves, but they bless the people around them. That's why our company is called Money Ripples. Is that ripple effect you create in people's lives because as you create financial freedom for yourself, you now have a greater capacity to look outside of your own family, which I think just taking care of your family is kind of a selfish thing. It's looking outside your own family and saying, well, how else can I bless this world and the lives of those around me? That's the power of financial freedom. You always stay stuck and trapped working your 9 to 5 or 9 to 9 job or business. You'll never get out and you will never focus on other people as much as you will if you knew you had the freedom where you work because you want to, not because you have to. That's what I refer to as work optional, right? You don't care about retiring necessarily. You might want to retire, you might not, but you want to have still a life of purpose and meaning. And that's what a steward does. They want to use the money wisely like a saver. They don't want to lose it, right? They want to use it wisely, but they also know they have to use it. Where savers hold on to it. They hoard the money. They squirrel it away and hope that someday they have enough nuts to live on through the winter of retirement. That's not what a steward does. Steward says, what can I do to create wealth now? And how can I increase it and build it so that I'm now a better, not just steward of my own money, but now I can be a better steward of how I use my time in the service of others. Does that make sense? If you guys are with me so far, say yes or say something, right? Just make sure. Because again, it feels like I'm talking to myself sometimes. By the way, as you're doing that, welcome, Maribel. I see you're here. Michael from Colorado. Glad to have you guys on as well. But if this makes sense, I hope that makes a lot more sense to you. Awesome. James, I appreciate you. Angela, thank you for piping in just to make sure I'm not talking to myself. Justin, Reggie, David, same to all you guys as well. Terry. All right, let's get into it. Let's dig in. Stocks versus real estate. This is one of the mindsets you have to break. And I'm teaching the steward principle because it is a principle. You got to understand principles first, strategies second. 1-2 punch. If you get all heavy on principles, you're just all talk and all philosophy, but you're broke. If you're all heavy on strategies, if you don't have the right philosophy to back it up, then you can also go broke. So we got to make them work together. The biggest debate I hear with people is, well, what about the stock market versus real estate? Like, isn't the stock market better? Isn't real estate risky? Isn't it too high right now because of all the inflation and stuff? Well, that's what they've been telling you for years. In fact, I would show charts just like this, these Morningstar, these Ibbotson charts, that would show saying, look, you put $1 back in 1928, and today you would have $5 billion in the stock market, right? And that kind of stuff. But yeah, if you put it in a house, you barely keep up inflation, because that's only like 4%, I would show stuff like that. But look, 12% small cap stocks, 10% in large cap stocks and all that kind of stuff. What a bunch of BS, right? I even show them charts like this. Hey, you know what? If you put your money in the stock market, you make more money in real estate. Real estate sucks, right? Why did I say that? Because I got paid off of you putting money in the stock market, not off putting money in real estate. I got paid zero if you bought real estate. I made all the money if you put your money with me, right? Because that's what financial advisors do. They want assets under management. That's how they get paid. Here's the interesting thing is like I compare this to if I put in the same about $32,000 that I put into a down payment on a home in Tennessee. I bought this back in May of 2018, so just over 6 years ago. I thought, let's compare that 32,000 to the actual S&P 500, right? Now, the S&P 500 averaged more than we expected. Now, the average S&P 500 averaged 12% in these last 6+ years. It's interesting because I talked to somebody yesterday. They were talking also about that, that 1% fee for the advisor. But they said, yeah, we referred to this advisor because our friends were very happy with him because in the last 15 years, he averaged 15% a year. And I laughed at that. Because you know why? Because 15 years ago is 2009. March of 2009 was the market low, the lowest the market's been in a long, long time. So when you measure 15 years from March of 2009 till today, of course the numbers look awesome. It's like what Ben Stein said. He He's the guy that's from Ferris Bueller's Day Off that says, anyone, Bueller, that guy. He was a Harvard economist, believe it or not. His dad was also a Harvard professor in economics. And his dad taught him, he says, Ben, figures don't lie, but liars figure. And so when they said, yeah, they've been making 15% a year, I laughed. I said, do you know what the average of the stock market's been for the last 15 years? They're like, no, what? 15%. He did average. He was just doing the same. You could have done the same thing on your own, but he's charging you 1% to do the same stupid thing. And that 15% is way, way skewed. And just so you know, when I showed you guys that 8.4%, that's with that 15-year period, plus the previous 15 years, which also were still up, but it wasn't 15%. It was much more conservative than that. But anyways, long story. I'm diverging from this, but I really want to hammer this point down is that, again, numbers can be manipulated. So I want to make this apples to apples. If I put 32,000 in the stock market over 6 years ago, what would it be today? You'll see here, it more than doubled. The stock market did more than double. I have $65,000. I would have had $65,000 if I put that same $32,000 in that property into the stock market. That's not a bad thing. Now, I had good market timing if I would have put my money in the market. Maybe like many of you, you might have been like, I've made a lot of good money in the market doing nothing. And you're right. You did nothing, which also means if it goes down, you have no control over that either. You have no control over it going up nor down. And when it goes down hard and fast. But when it recovers much more slowly. That is a big warning sign. And most people, by the time they finally want to get out of it, they don't bail out until it hits the bottom, right? What if you could get out when it's at the top? Something to think about there. Now, see that same 32,000, I bought that real estate property. I'm now almost 400% ROI because 1, there's appreciation. 2, there's cash flow. 3, they're also paying down my mortgage. And in fact, I actually put that in there too, go the total equity. So they're paying down the mortgage for me on this, doing this, right? Well, look at this, guys. Based on cash flow, again, it doesn't matter how much money you have, it's what kind of income does it generate. If I would have put that same money, having $65,000, you're only supposed to pull off 3% a year, not 4%, 3% a year is what you're supposed to pull off when you use traditional mutual funds so you don't run out of money. By the way, if you want to retire early, like in your 40s or so, it should only be 2%. So it should even be less than that because you will run out of money with market volatility if you're trying to be aggressive. Well, 1950 a year, about 2,000 a year you make on the stock market. Not bad, but not fantastic either. Look at this right here. Starting actually this month, my income on this property is now net after I pay my property management fees, because I don't do anything with the property management at all. I don't deal with the renters or anything. I just own the property and collect the checks. After I pay the mortgage payment, everything else, I'm still left with just over that $800 a month net income. So $800 a month versus less than roughly about $160 a month is what the difference is, right? What would you rather have? And like I said, there's a real return on the stock market right there. Now, many people think, what about saving a 401k? Well, good question. Well, here's the problem, guys. Here's the real stats. Again, I like evidence, right? The real stats says that there's 45 million account holders with Fidelity, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest 401k provider out there right now. Only 810,000 have at least $1 million. That's 1.8%, guys. I can guarantee you more than 1.8% of these people are baby boomers that have been saving diligently for many years, having been told, keep saving more, which they have been. I bet you some of these people even been max funding their 401ks, and yet only 1.8% have at least $1 million. So if you actually happen to have $1 million in your 401k, congratulations, you've just beat the odds. But here's what's scary, guys. Transamerica poll, it came out that same exact year there at the end of 2023, said of those people that have $1 million, 35% said it would take a miracle to be able to retire. Why? Because like I just said, in that traditional financial world, if there's a financial advisor that's actually honest, he'll say, pull off 3% a year. Well, if you have $1 million, what's 3% of $1 million? It's $30,000 a year, right? That's not a lot to live on. Now, I know some people out there, there's gonna be somebody who will say, well, I've been single and I can live on $30,000 a year, or I've got Social Security to help me out, or whatever it might be, right? I always get somebody on the internet will try to challenge me because they'll say, 30,000, you guys are spoiled. Well, okay, some of us actually want to have, more things in our life, including people. If you have kids or grandkids, it's probably going to cost you more than 30,000 a year to not just survive for yourself, but also be able to do the things that you want to do, right? So of course, a third of those people are going to say it's going to take a miracle to retire because at $1 million, they know it's still not enough. for most people, they want to retire today. If they want 100,000 a year, that means they got to have at least 3.33 million saved up. And, and as was mentioned so much earlier, of course, if you lose that money in taxes, because if you put in 401ks, you still have to get taxed on it later. You realize, oh, I'm going to need at least $4 million in today's dollars, not counting inflation, just to be able to say I can live on 100,000 a year. Guys, it's bad. By the way, 20 years ago when I was a financial advisor, my dream was to live on 5,000 a month or 60,000 a year. Why? Because to me, back then, 5,000 a month seemed pretty comfortable. But today, after inflation and everything else, 5,000 a month sounds like, oh, I'm barely middle class, right? By the way, the average income is even higher than that right now. So that's the biggest thing. This is why it's such a big lie. Here's the other problem, guys. I kind of mentioned it like this: if only 1% of you of you are going to be successful at this strategy, it's like having that one, like 99 one-star reviews and only getting one 5-star review from your mom for that restaurant. But if you saw 99 other one-star reviews, would you go to that restaurant? Of course not. But why do people keep going back to 401ks that have been proven still, now that we're about to enter the 40th year of 401ks for the average employer, right? They've been around since the 70s, but they came in the beginning of 1985 for average employers. Why are we going to the 40th year and yet so few people have made it work? And don't tell me it's because people are spending money, because people that actually save in 401ks are not the spenders, they're the savers. They're the people that actually have been diligently saving. And even then, and by the way, over 52% of people eligible for a 401k do contribute to a 401k. And I'm eligible and I wouldn't dare touch these things because I know they suck. Here's another reason why: the match. I saw this with the actual Fidelity funds. Fidelity funds underperformed the market by over 2%. And that was before the 0.75% fee coming out. That means it underperformed the average market returns the last 10 years by over 3%. Sorry, not over. It was 2.85%, almost 3%. Guys, that's a big problem because remember, you take away 3% from 8, you're left with maybe 5.5%. I ran this showing you a 5.25%, more accurate to what I was just saying now, right? You're saving 20,000 a year max funding, but notice that that's with a 20,000. That means you get 10,000 you contribute. This is the one on the right I'm referring to. 10,000 you contribute, 10,000 match. Like if you get 100% match, you'll have, 2.7 million. But notice, if you put 10,000 a year away, you don't get a match. You do it on your own. You get that 8% average of the market, if you get the 8% average on the market. But using this more apples to apples, that I said 2.85%. I only made a 2.75% spread. Again, I'm trying to be a devil's advocate against my own point here, right? But notice you have more money not getting the match just by getting the actual market returns. So what this really means is that your 100% match is not a 100% rate of return. It only adds an extra few percent. But really all it's doing is make up for the bad performance of those bad funds, right? So the match just makes it for bad performance. Why would I want to throw good money after bad? I'd rather just use my own money and have it in my control. And maybe rather than just throwing it into a 401k that I'd have to wait till I'm about 60 years old to touch, what if I could actually do it sooner? What if I could actually retire sooner by not doing the 401k? You guys getting my point? Now, I'm bringing all this stuff up because in order to figure out how to make enough passive income, you've got to break free from these beliefs, these myths that everybody's been brainwashing to believe. The financial companies, just to understand this, the Fidelities of the world, the Merrill Lynches and everybody else, the Chase banks, these guys are all profiting off of your ignorance. They're all profiting by telling you where to put your money, which is with who? Them. And who works for them? Who's their armed forces? It's the financial advisors and the money experts. And by the way, you can go to Forbes magazine. Guess who pays for all the ads in Forbes magazine? It's the banks and the financial institutions. All of these people have been brainwashing you and monopolizing the education space so that you just do what they do. Yet there's still tens of millions of us that do what I do, and we actually have financial freedom. But we don't put billions of dollars into marketing to tell you this stuff. So quick advice I'm going to give here is one is get lean. I don't mean get cheap. I mean get lean. First and foremost, you need to make sure that you actually are tracking your money and knowing where your money is going and how much you actually have to work with. This is important. You've got to know if you want to get to point Z, like if you want 2,000 a month, maybe you want 10,000 a month, you got to know where point A is. So you got to understand these different points. So you've got to start getting lean. You don't have to cut out that latte or whatever. You don't have to live on rice and beans your whole life, but it does mean being a wise steward by watching how much income's coming in, how much is going out, and proactively doing something about it. One client that actually came to me, he's like, listen, like I've been working in my practice, he's a chiropractor, right? He's been like, I've been working in my practice for 3 years and And actually, each year my business has kind of been going down. He's like, I'm burning out. I'm 62 years old. I need to make a change. And so I actually we had him use our cash flow calculator, or sorry, not cash flow calculator, the cash flow optimizer, which is an Excel spreadsheet. Had him fill that out. This is something that all of our clients use. Even if you are part of a Wealth Accelerator Academy, you get access to this too. And I think you might even get it if you do Cash Flow Secrets course as well. I think you get access to this tool too. So we filled it all out, right? And we started looking at income and expenses and started seeing what was there. But what I noticed is I said, well, look at this. You've got some loans here, some debts. For the most part, by the way, I don't think debt's evil, but depending on the debt and what the payment is, that's the thing that creates the stress, right? It's the payment, not the balance. So I use a formula that I created called the cash flow index to help them figure it out. I said, well, if we refinance your house, pay off these specific debts right here, we can actually free up $4,200 a month. But this is, by the way, this was after his house had lost some value. He didn't have enough equity. I said, but you'll have to pay down 100 grand of your mortgage balance to be able to refinance and then do this. And he said, oh, I don't know if I could do that because the only money I have is 500,000 IRA. I said, well, why not? Why not do that? And so we actually had him do that. We had him take out of the 500,000. I told him, like, once you just use 100,000 of that, yes, you'll pay tax on it, but use 100,000 of that to then free up 4,200 a month. He's like, yeah, but how am I going to retire, Chris? If I use my IRA money, I won't be able to retire. I said, well, if you take 100,000, make 4,200 a month, you realize that's 50,000 a year of guaranteed freed up cash flow. That's like a $50,000 a year raise, 50% rate of return. He's like, I still don't get it. Finally, it was his wife, because wives usually get it faster. The wife says, this makes perfect sense. This is common sense here. Let's do it. And by the way, you still have 400,000 that's still left in there. We're not even using all your money. So he did. He freed up the 4,200 a month. But here's the cool thing. We also helped him save about 10,000 a year in tax savings. So between the two of those things, that's already $60,000 a year he's freeing up. That's like 5,000 bucks a month, guys. Do you think that he relaxed a little bit more? Needless to say, he did. His business income also, because he relaxed more, he actually started converting more patients because he wasn't just burned out. He wasn't low energy. He was actually feeling relaxed and happy again. And so he started to have joy in his business. And as a result, his sales, his revenue went up. And he made another 30,000 a year. So guys, just from that one little cash flow move, he improved his cash flow by 90,000 a year, and he still had the 400,000 to invest. That's huge. And by the way, that 400,000 makes 10% return. That's 40,000 a year. That would put him well over 100,000 a year of total cash flow improved, right? That's huge, guys. Buffett, just so you know, when it comes to holding cash, Buffett's now got 180, actually, yeah, he's got 189 billion in cash right now. I should update that article there to match the number. But yeah, he's got almost 200 billion sitting in cash, the most he's ever had, sitting around waiting. Why? Because my next point is not just to get lean, but to get liquid. Here is where you find the money. Like I told you before, here's where you find the money to invest. Like I said, if you have a current 401k with an employer that you're not the employer, but you have an employer where it's locked up, that 401k money is gone. You cannot use it. It's not even in your name, by the way. You're a beneficiary. What's interesting is you're the benefactor of 401k. The United States government is actually the owner of your 401k because of that 401, that tax code 401 subsection K. You're actually not even the owner of your own 401k. You're just the benefactor. That's why they can change the tax rules whenever they want. They can even change the age requirements whenever they want. So if they say currently 59 and a half is you have to wait till before you get 10% penalty, what if they change it to 62 and a half, right when you were 58? This happened in France, by the way. France actually just upped their retirement age, and those that were just about to retire are pissed off, right? Imagine you've saved up for 30, 40 years. Like, I'm about there. Oh, now I got to wait more years. Yeah, they bumped their retirement age up to 65 instead of 62. So it can happen to you too, guys. So just so you know that, again, that another big strike against the 401ks and even IRAs in general. But if you got bank savings, you can actually use this to generate passive income. Life insurance, cash value. We especially recommend things like whole life insurance. Universal life you can use too, but it's a little bit uncertain, especially if the markets go down. You could be losing money. Not to mention sometimes they just don't make as much money as they overpromise on those kind of things. But life insurance, cash value you can be using to invest. Mutual funds, if you got mutual funds sitting around, that includes stocks and bonds, right? Old 401ks, like I mentioned, or IRAs, even Roth IRAs, you can actually use to invest in other things besides the stock market. Many people don't know you can do what's called a self-directed IRA, where you can actually take your money, roll it over, have it in your control, and invest it almost anywhere you want. not in mutual funds or in the stock market. You can actually invest it in buying things that are backed by real assets like real estate, oil and gas. You can even buy into businesses with it. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with an IRA that they just won't teach you because, again, financial advisors don't get paid if you move your money away from them. Rental properties. You might have too much equity in rental properties that could be used. Same thing with home equity. Although we haven't been so aggressive on telling people, let's use your home equity to invest, in some cases, it's made sense. And like I mentioned, if you got things like gold, silver, crypto, that's also money you could be using too. I actually had a client, by the way, that had about $80,000 in gold. He could have paid off a bunch of credit cards with that to free up about $1,700 a month, but he wouldn't do it because he's like waiting for the dollar to collapse. This was 10 years ago, guys. That's a lost opportunity cost right there because that was cash flow he could have had. He could have always bought gold later and actually bought it for cheaper than what it was at that time because he was just holding on to it, right? Sometimes holding on to things long term doesn't work. I'll talk about that in a second too. All right, so let's give you some other examples. This is a Colorado chiropractor. I actually, we were looking at the same thing, looking at his sheet. Told him, I said, listen, you got equity in this condo. What if you sold that off and actually paid off 40,000 credit cards? So to actually improve his cash flow by a net about I think it was like what was that? Whatever 15,600 a year is divided by 12. I'm blanking out now. It's like $1,200 something dollars a month, whatever. So I said, if you just do that, the condo was only making like $100 a month net, but paying off the credit cards gave him a guaranteed return. Now, that, like I said, it doesn't include downsizing bad team members. He was also very, very unprofitable. He had a lot of people around him, but he didn't want to fire anybody. But they weren't really maximizing anything. He was working 80 hours a week, and his wife was also working 80 hours a week in that same practice, all because they just want to keep building it bigger. But the problem is they created a job for themselves, and the cash flow was the big thing. And I said, man, if you just sell off this condo, you can always buy a condo back again. But man, freeing up this $15,000 a year guaranteed, way better than $1,200 a year with that condo rent. Where can you invest? Now we're getting into it, right? Where are places you could invest? I'm actually showing you a screenshot here of one of my investments, a partnership that I'm in with Raw Land, that a little over 400,000, probably about 425 to 450,000 total invested, now generating over $11,000 a month currently, after about 3 years. Again, no guarantees, not giving investment advice, all the disclaimers you got to have here, right? Now, if you have less than $100,000, I'm going to give you this advice. Build more savings. Don't even worry about trying to passively invest right now. The reason is because it's not that you can't do passive investments, but I generally recommend that even if you're doing passive investments, you want to diversify, right? And so like we talk about like doing rentals, you could do rentals worth maybe $30,000 or $40,000 down out of pocket, but you might only be able to buy 1 or 2 rentals. What if that one rental doesn't do great? What if it doesn't quite pay out as well as you thought in the beginning? Maybe it pays out better later. In the beginning, it's creating stress. You're going to think every rental's bad, or vice versa. What if you do really well on the one rental and then the next one you buy is a lemon, right? It's possible, especially depending if you're trying to do it on your own, right? That's really possible. You don't want to get caught in just putting all your eggs in that one basket. So I generally recommend people have at least 150,000 before they even work with us, because if they do, then we often can diversify in at least 2 or 3 places, if not more. So that's why I tell people, if you got less than 100,000, don't even worry about passive income right now. Just keep building your savings. One great way to build it outside of the bank that pays you 0.nothing% and keep it tax free is that infinite banking strategy I talk about, which is another one. I won't put a ton of time and effort into this, but the great thing about our own max ROI infinite banking, that strategy that we use, that's money you can actually use that grows tax-free now and later, like a Roth IRA, but there's no 59.5 rule. You don't have to wait till you're 59.5 to use it. You can use it from day one. It's also 100% protected from lawsuits and creditors in most states. Yes, even in the Republic of Texas, just for you. But in most states, it's 100% protected from lawsuits and creditors, meaning you can have millions in here and people can't touch it at all. They can get to your savings accounts, they can get to your IRAs, but they cannot get to this. It's safer than the bank. You can actually store millions in here, like I said, safely. It's actually, FDIC only protects about 1.5% of banks' money. That means, guys, that if the banks do start failing, say 10% of banks fail, I can guarantee you're not going to get your money out immediately. The government's going to be scrambling trying to figure out how to get you your money, almost like it was back in the COVID days, right? Guaranteed growth. Like I said, no stupid limits or penalties. You can put in a lot more than $6,000 or $7,000 a year. You can put in up to 25% of your stated gross annual income. Bank leverage protects your family as well as creates a legacy. And like I said, access to cash now, a great place to store your emergency reserves while you're building it up. So then you've got the money to use. And even by that point where you have money to start investing, guess what? You can actually get your money to pay you twice by having it still earn interest inside the policy while be able to use it, leverage it from the insurance company by borrowing from them to go and invest and make money on that side too. You can actually make money twice. Again, like I said, I'll do a master class here probably within the next few weeks, just going into the details of how that really works. Now, if you got at least six figures, you got at least $150,000. Here's some different passive investments. And even if you don't have 100 or 150,000, this is just good to know. There's things like turnkey rentals, right? So like turnkey rentals are kind of like what I showed you before, my Tennessee property, where I don't have to find the property. I find the company that they help me find properties to pick from. They help me get the financing. They help me get the property management if they're not the property manager themselves. And they manage it all. They do all the work. I just have to buy it. The worst thing I have to deal with is going through the buying process. After that, it's just managing the property manager, which is pretty unexciting to say the least. And that's good. I like boring. Boring to me is sexy sometimes, right? But I like it when you got a good property manager that's just doing their job. They're renewing the leases, raising the rents every year, which is awesome. And you get paid for returns when you do turnkey rentals. You get paid not just from the cash flow, the net profit. But like I said, they pay your mortgage balance for you. Because even when I showed you that net profit I was getting, that was after they were already paying my mortgage payment for me. So that's paying down my mortgage balance. 3, there's appreciation, as you well know. And then 4, guess what? I even get tax advantages. I get to keep most, if not all, of that money because of things like depreciation and things like that. It's awesome. Now, right now, they're not the best investment. I'll tell you that right now. They're not the best cash flowing investment currently. But I would say over time, this is probably one of the safer, better returning investments overall. Just like you saw with my property, they definitely can help build and grow your wealth faster than some of these other investment strategies. Now, if you're looking more for cash flow or good income, lending is a great way to do it. You can actually lend your money to other real estate investors for them to do the work, right? They're the ones that are going to take it. And then they pay you a contractual interest rate, just like you would pay, they would pay the bank, just like you would too. They do the same thing. And some of them will even, you could put claim on that property. So say that you actually like are just doing an individual property, right? Someone wants to borrow $200,000 from you. Maybe it's worth $300,000. They borrow $200,000 from you. You're like the bank. You're like the mortgage company. They got to pay you. If they don't pay you, guess what you do? You foreclose on them. You take the property. And of course, the property is worth $300,000. Ta-da! You got some equity in there, right? Now, even if it's not worth $200,000, say it's only worth $250. Maybe it's not as worth as much as they thought it would be, or maybe they weren't done with renovations or something. Well, $250 will still get your $200,000 back, won't it? So you got some protection there, but of course they might say, I'll pay you 10, 11, maybe 12% a year on that money. I did a note recently where they paid me 15% on the money for just a 3-month hold. It's a 3-month borrowing. That's awesome. That's a great way to do it. Right now, that's one of my favorite strategies because it has claim to a property if you're doing it right, and it's paying really well right now because banks are charging more. You can sometimes charge a little bit more too. There's also funds, but I don't mean mutual funds. Many people say, well, I don't want to buy into one property. And maybe if I lend to one property, what if that one property, something goes wrong? That's a lot of risk sometimes, right? It could be. Well, what if you could have it in multiple properties? Well, that's where funds come in. And sometimes they'll pay you a contractual type of return. Sometimes it's just based on all profits they make in their portfolio of their different real estate investments. It could be apartments and whatnot. It could be like I have one guy that he buys individual homes, but he also does buy some apartments just to diversify a little bit. And then he just pays you a contractual return somewhere between 10 and 12%, depending on how much you invest with them, So there's things like that. And yes, you can use your IRA money to invest in these things and let it compound and grow while avoiding paying taxes on it. You can invest in apartment buildings. There's things called syndications where you pool your money with other investors because you probably don't have millions of dollars just lying around to buy a single apartment building by yourself. Well, when you pool your money with other investors, you get a percentage ownership in that. I'll say apartments right now are not the best place. Check again maybe in 2025, and maybe they will be. But right now, the last few years, because those interest rates have been going crazy, apartments have been suffering a little bit. But that's definitely one of those options you can use. Self-storage, same kind of thing. They've kind of been hit a little bit harder this lately, but when it comes to recessionary times, they tend to be better because when people downsize, they like to use self-storage. So self-storage can also be a great one. Oil or mineral rights. You can actually get paid by having the land that the oil companies themselves drill on. Because believe it or not, oil companies don't want to own land, they just want to drill. So they'll pay you a lease to use your land, and they might even pay you with mineral rights. So whatever profits they earn from the stuff they pull out of the ground, whether it be oil or even natural gas, which is like the kind of the foam on top, so to speak. It's like the gas that comes off from the oil. They can mine both, right? They can pull out of the earth both, and you get paid royalties on that. That's something that we actually got some more money in lately, and I've kind of enjoyed a little bit. Slower growth sometimes faster growth. It just depends. And then partnerships, like the one I mentioned with the raw land. You do raw land partnerships, like where, literally they are doing all the buying and selling the raw land. But what they'll do is they'll buy it at wholesale, sell it to somebody at retail price, and then they'll have us pay us like we're the bank for over the next 5 or 10 years. So we're getting paid monthly payments off of that. Now, if they stop paying us monthly, guess what? We foreclose on them, and then we go and sell it again, usually at a higher price to the next person. And so that's the one like I mentioned, I've invested in total with even the business costs, not even just investment money, but business costs too. I've put in over $400,000, probably getting close to about 450,000. However, it's actually generated, like I said, over 11,000 a month, and the total land I own is over $800,000. So it's already more than double of what I've paid to be into that business. But just so you know, there's other things. You can even be investing in like car wash businesses and things like that. So there's just so many other things you can invest in that I, as a financial advisor, never knew about. And these are the things that they won't tell you about because why? They don't get paid when you do this. The crazy thing is you can make a lot more money doing this. So let me give you some more client examples, and I'll open up some questions too. James, just to answer your question on this, I appreciate you asking that question. How do you start infinite banking strategy? James, if you just go right to moneyripples.com, we have a whole infinite banking section. We actually design those ourselves. So that's a great question to ask. So for those of you that are interested in knowing how to implement that strategy, even how it works, we got a whole page on that strategy too. All right, so how are they doing it? I show this guy's face because this guy's a pretty cool experience, because with him, he was living in California. He had one rental, and his goal was just to do what the typical saver does, right? His goal, oh, wow, I don't know how I did that. I think I bumped something here. Oh, there we go. All right. So his goal was actually to pay off both mortgages on his house and his rental property. And when he does that, he'll free up about $4,000 a month. Here's what's cool, guys. I said, well, you got $700,000 of equity in this property. Why don't you sell this rental property? It only pays you $200 a month. Just so you know, if you do what's called return on equity, the calculations of that, he was earning a 0.3% return on his equity. He had 700,000 equity, only making about $2,400 a year. That's pretty bad, guys. Making 0.3%. He could almost put that money in the bank and make more money. He could put money in the bank and make more money. So I said, why don't you sell that property and we could tax-free transfer it into other properties? And so he kind of hum-hawed about it for a few years, finally decided to do it. He just recently gave me an update just a few months ago, said, Chris, I just bought my 7th property now with that equity. And I'm now generating over $9,000 a month of cash flow. You know what's crazy, guys? That was just 5 years ago. I told him to do that. He's all done this all in the last 3 or 4 years. What's crazy is that 700,000, if he would have just gone the path he was on, it would have been next year before he paid off his mortgage, and he would only been making about $2,400 a month. But because he did this, because he could do it faster, he's making over $9,000 a month. And a lot happier, I'll tell you that much. So it's not, again, you listen to that traditional advice, like the Dave Ramsey advice, it's not going to work. Here's another guy, which he actually told us, he's like, hey, I've actually gotten to 87% of what I need to pay my basic bills, 58% to be very comfortable, right? So he's already on track. He's actually about $3,500 a month. He was on my podcast recently. And all that, I'll actually come back to his story later. It's pretty cool. This woman right here, she did some oil investments, like we mentioned before, did some of those debt funds, a real estate fund. In total, her $650,000 became now $76,000 a year. She is currently financially independent. She is work optional, right? So this is not even just $2,000 a month, right? This is a lot more. This guy, we took years. I spent years and years, actually really over a decade. We finally were able to access the equity from his property. And with that equity, he went to a variety of different things. You can see we kind of diversified in different places. $232,000 a year. His goal was $120,000 a year. He just wanted $10,000 a month. He surpassed that. Again, results may vary. Nothing's guaranteed, right? This one I love because This one illustrates like the difference between financial advisors and what's possible. This guy here, he had $1 million in his retirement account by the time he retired. And what was interesting is that he went to his financial advisor, and the financial advisor said, "Yeah, you have $1 million. You can pull out 30,000 a year." He says, "I didn't work this hard for this long to live on 30,000 a year. I need something else." And so he started searching around, found our podcast, the Money Ripples podcast, started listening to that, and then started working with us. Now he'd already started to do some things like apartment investing before then. Then he did some things with oil and gas and some other places. He even bought some duplexes and whatnot. Next thing you know, guys, that same $1 million wasn't making him 30,000 a year, but now it's making him over $100,000 a year. This is key, guys. It's again not about how much money you have; it's about how hard that money works for you. This is why people will say, "Well, I could do this and make this kind of return in the stock market." Yeah, you could, but because of the volatility of the stock market, because it's not a guaranteed income stream, and because inflation kicks your butt, you got to pull off a lot less. That's why they say only 3% a year, because they're afraid you're going to run out of money too soon. If the market goes down while you're pulling money out, it's like a double whammy. Where this, when you have stable, steady, predictable streams of income, this is where it's different. That's why you can get your money to do work so much harder. This couple right here, they wanted to just, they had like $5 million in stocks. And I said, well, first and foremost, and then the coach they worked with Craig, we started looking at it. We said, well, look, if we pay off some of these loans here, we could free up $3,800 a month with very little out of pocket. So let's do that first before they even invest. And we actually helped save more 30,000 a year tax savings. So do the math, guys. That's about 70,000 a year, even without spending a dime. And actually, it was more than that because they sold the rental, improved their cash flow by $2,000 a month. So really now they're like closer to almost $100,000 a year, over 90,000 a year, not investing anything, and then they still have the money from stocks that they can use to generate more. They have not broken over 600,000 a year because they still are holding on to some of those stocks. Some of those are tech stocks that I'm like, how long are those going to keep going up? I don't know. Might be a good time. Here's the thing: if you want 100,000 cash flow a year in 10 years, and you're starting from scratch at zero, here's what you need to do. If you do a mutual fund earning 7%, you better start saving $19,000 a month to be able to pull that much money off. Not easy. I'll tell you that much. Trying to save up like 235,000 a year so you can live on 100,000 a year in 10 years doesn't appeal to most people. You could invest at 10% a month or 10% a year and doing the kind of strategy we talk about, and then it requires like 5,000 a month. Not easy, but it's better, isn't it? If you only just earned 2% better, if you got 12%, now you only have to save about $37.20 a month. It saves you about $1,200 a month to be able to do that in 10 years. That's starting from zero. I know many of you guys doing this right now aren't at zero. You have some resources you could probably be using right now. But that's the truth, guys. So if you want to retire in 10 to 15 years, like I said, if you're starting from zero, this is what it takes, but it does require you to get better returns. So here's the big picture, guys. Here's the big deal is that, like I said, it's principles first, using these strategies like Max ROI Infinite Banking and passive income investments. That's really where it works here. All right. So I know I've got a little bit over time here, but I want to kind of share one last strategy here with you guys here. Or really, this is kind of the comparison. I mentioned the guy before that he was making about $3,500 a month in real estate. I just had a follow-up call with him and his wife recently, a couple of them actually. And they've been working with us for 5 years and since 2019. It's funny because there's another woman I talked to in 2019 as well that didn't work with us. But it was fascinating because she was stuck in that mindset. Maybe like many of you guys were trained where, again, and maybe like I was trained really as a financial advisor. I thought the same way she did, which was I just got to keep saving my money, keep saving. Now this woman was living in Arizona here, right? She had about 250,000 she saved in mutual funds. She was in her mid 50s. And she's like, Chris, I would love to have enough passive income so that I just do health coaching because I want to. She was a health coach. And I said, well, tell me your ideal day. What would it look like? She said, I would love just to health coach a few clients in the morning and then have the whole day free just to do whatever I want. I said, okay, well, what kind of income would you need to have coming in to help support that lifestyle? And she was single. She was a divorced woman, no kids left at home, empty nested. She said, I just need 2,000 more a month. That's all I need. And I said, okay, well, you talked to a financial advisor recently. You've got $250,000. What did they say? She said, I got to save a lot more money. And I said, you're right. If you do what they talk about doing, you got to save a lot more money. Because if you want 2,000 a month or 24,000 a year, that's after taxes, you got to get that $250,000 up to at least $1 million, right? Because think about it, even with that guy, he had $1 million, 30,000 a year, he still has to pay taxes on 30,000 a year, right? And so that maybe leaves him with 2,000 a month if he's lucky. I told her the same thing. I was like, yeah, you'd probably have to get up to about $1 million. She's like, well, that sounds hard. I'm like, it is. You got to start saving a lot of money right now to get to that $1 million mark. I said, but you said 2,000 a month, right? She's like, yeah. Well, what if you did this? What if you took that 250,000 and just earned a 10% rate of return on that money, investing in things that actually provide income at 10% a year? Guess what you're making per year? She did the math. She's like, well, that's 25,000 a year. I said, that's right, which is just over $2,000 a month, isn't it? She said, oh my gosh, you're right. And then this is what she said. She's like, wait a minute, is this too good to be true? Are you lying to me right now? Are you pulling my leg? I said, you were hoping to do it in 10 years with that financial advisor. I'm telling you, you could do it in about a year and you could still have that life that you want. And maybe you can do it faster depending on what you invest in and or how much you're saving. And she's like, you got to be lying to me. I'm like, it's not a lie. It's just math. It's simple math. It's not hard. Well, here's the crazy thing, guys. A week later, I follow up with her. I was like, hey, so when are we doing this? When are you hiring us? And she said, I'd love to work with you guys one-on-one, but I was talking with some friends of mine and my financial advisor, and they said, that sounds too risky. You should just keep doing mutual funds. Now, granted, if she was in good mutual funds, she might have gone from $250,000 to $500,000, maybe, right, in these last 5 years, or not quite that much, but pretty close, And I'm like, okay, that's fine, whatever. But contrast that with Louis that I just talked about there. We had him on our podcast recently, and then of course we had some follow-up meetings, and they talked to us. They said, Chris, we've learned some things lately that's been pretty powerful. One is the power of real estate, especially in our portfolio, because when we started out, we had $250,000 in mutual funds. So they started with the same amount of money as this woman at the same time. They said, we've now bought 10 rentals. We own 10 rentals, cash flowing about $3,500 a month. And here's the crazy thing. They're like, our net worth is now over $1 million. Even if you take out our home equity, right? Even if you don't include our own home, it's still about $800,000. They still had about literally 2/3 of $1 million of assets just from the real estate side of things. Yes, they use $250,000 of it, but the crazy thing is that now the equity in that real estate's worth over $665,000. Think about that. Think about that for a minute, because now it's generating $3,500 a month. If you had $500,000 at 3%, you're only generating about $15,000 a year or $1,250 a month. They're over $2,000 a month better than what they would have done just being in the stock market, and probably even better than that, because like I said, it probably hasn't quite doubled in 5 years. So, I mean, if you think about this two contrasts, and they're like way happier. And then the crazy thing is they also had real estate that, not real estate, but they inherited some mutual funds, some stocks, right? From back in 1997. They said, you know what's crazy? Those stocks maybe made us 35% in the last 25 years. But my sister, one of their sisters, she's like, my sister took that same money in those stocks that we had. They took that same money, bought real estate back in the late 90s, and now have millions in real estate. Millions in value that pays them more money. This we have sitting around like, yeah, we got it, but so what? That is the difference, guys. That is the difference. It's not just what you can do in the 1 year, which of course you can do. And that woman could have been financially independent in about a year, but she didn't. She didn't do it. She procrastinated. She wasted her time away. And as a result, other people like Louis passed her up with the same amount of money doing the same things that she probably could have done herself. And that is the difference, guys, that you only have right now. You might be saying, where were you 20 or 30 years ago? But the truth is you only have right now. That's the thing, guys. Like I said, fill out that passive income calculator, how to become work optional. I'm going to ask you, if you have questions right now, put them in the comments right now. I'll address a few questions. I know I've run over later than I expected, but I really want you guys to walk away with some good content, some good meat here. But the passive income calculator, fill that out completely. You'll actually see that, I'll have the link show up right here. Boom, there it is. But go ahead and click on that so you can find out how to make that work. But that's the thing, guys. Like all you have is right now, right? And every year that this passes, you just never know what's going to happen. So, for example, I found this. I was actually driving ironically to my bank. I was driving to my bank and I saw this show up on my phone. It gave me two routes. It was the route I was planning on taking, which was literally 1 minute away. You can see it's also eco-friendly, right? And then see the other route. The other route takes 24,855 days and 3 hours longer than that 1 minute. I've never seen that happen on my phone before, but it was so amazing. I had to pull over and take that screenshot because it was just too cool not to see. But this is kind of true, guys. So many people, they get caught in trying to do not, they'll say they're conservative investors, but in truth, they're really just comfortable savers. They save in the place where everybody else is saved. But remember, if only 1% of people have been successful, like really feeling free, doing, putting their money in mutual funds and 401ks, that's only about 1%. Why do we keep doing it? Why do we keep thinking that works? When there's literally tens of millions of us, there are 25 million millionaires in the United States. And the one thing in common is that we have real estate in our portfolio. Not all of us have mutual funds. I don't have any stocks or mutual funds anymore. I do have a little bit in similar type of things, but I keep a more conservative portfolios. But for the most part, I keep my money out of the market completely, especially right now. I don't want it in the stock market. It's overbought. And if that goes down, how many more years do you have to wait for it to come back up again just to where you were at 0%, right? I never want that to happen. I want my money to keep growing and more importantly, to keep paying me year after year. Guys, I'll tell you, just earlier this month, I went to visit my dad for his 80th birthday. Never in our wildest dreams would we think he had lived that long, considering the kind of health he was in. I mean, he had strokes in his 40s, heart attacks in his 50s. He's got like 12 stents in his arteries. The guy is still alive somehow, right? A miracle. I was so glad we were able to go back. And we were able to go visit the family. I gave him a signed picture from Johnny Cash. Unfortunately, the Johnny Cash Museum left the price tag on it. He's like, what? I don't get this. Like, why would you, is this what rich people do? This is what you spend money on? Like, why would you spend all your money on this? I'm like, first off, you're a huge Johnny Cash fan. His moniker, his little stage name when he would do karaoke was Ronnie Cash. That's how much of a Johnny Cash fan this guy is, right? So I knew that this would make his day, make his year, maybe, just, definitely like brighten his day, not to mention seeing us after not seeing us for 2 years, especially because he's been in and out of hospitals so much. And so this thing has been huge, huge thing for me. But I'll tell you, he even said to me recently, he said, Chris, I don't even understand your life. Like you go, you travel, you do these things. And when I was working, I just had to keep working and working. I just figured if I just kept working hard, eventually I would save enough that I could finally retire and enjoy my time with you guys. But by the time I finally got to the point where I could retire, which was in his 70s, by the way, you guys are already grown up. You have your own families. You're too busy for me now. It's like cats in the cradle. And I said, yeah, like it's true. It's a different life. It's not that you couldn't have had that life, but it's just you were never taught that life, taught how to do it. He's like, man, like I wish I could have gone back and done the same thing. Guys, don't take the long route to get there. There's a much better route to do. It's not get rich quick, but you can definitely do it faster. And the truth is, guys, like it's not just about getting you and your family well off. It's not about just creating freedom for yourself. It's about what can you do to bless the lives of those around you. That is the kind of ripple effect I want you guys to have. Remember, the most dangerous risk of all is the risk of spending your life not doing what you want on the bet that you can buy yourself the freedom to do it later. What if there is no later? What if you don't live to age 80? What if you don't even make it to retirement? What will your life say today? What can you actually do now? That's the key thing I want you guys to remember from this. So again, appreciate you guys' time here. I'm going to open up for questions at this point. Let me take it off of that. All right. Reggie just asked this question. Oops. Now the questions are rolling in. So go ahead and ask any question you have. Does the website have information on the coaching program? Yes, it does. I would just say this, Reggie, the first thing to do is before you even worry about the coaching program is see if you qualify. If you do the passive income calculator and it comes up with at least $15,000 on that result, then we should definitely be talking. Our requirement is this, and this is something we have internally. We never, ever bring on a client unless we know we can make them more than what they pay us in that first year. Unlike some programs out there where you might have to wait 5 years, they might even tell you, hey, in 5-10 years, you'll make this much, then you'll make your money back. We don't do that. We don't want to bring anybody on unless you make more than what, than basically what you're paying us. And that's the way it should be, right? That's always the way it should be. Cool thing is we only charge an upfront, and then we have a very small retainer on the back end. That same couple that had 740,000, I told them, on the retainer, you're only paying a couple $100 a month. That's way cheaper than paying every year at least $7,500 or more, or $10,000 a year to an advisor that doesn't do anything with your money that you couldn't do on your own. Way better. And just so you know, again, we're not investment advisors, but we do help you strategize. We do help you kind of figure out how to really maneuver it, right? Just like I mentioned with all those examples, we had to look at the money, see where the money was, and what's the best way to use that money to generate the best cash flow as well as passive income as possible in your situation. So great question. But yeah, again, and then there's in the comments, if you didn't see that, you can actually just go straight to it. There's a consulting tab right there on moneyripples.com. You can click on there. All right. Any other questions before I let you guys go? I know we've had a lot of fun here together the last hour or so. Really enjoyed it. Hopefully, just if you don't have a question, type in the comments. Was this worthwhile? What was like the biggest thing you got from this? Like, I'd love to see feedback. Like, what stuck in your mind? What was the thing that you said that if I got nothing else, that one thing I learned was well worth my while? What would that be for you? Go ahead and put that in the comments section here, because I would love to see what's stuck in your mind. Because I taught you guys a lot. Just so you know, you guys learned more than I learned as a financial advisor. And that's pretty sad. I spent 4 years as a financial advisor too. So, all right, let's see what you guys got here. I know there's still several of you guys on live. Now, if you're watching recording, also put that in the comments too. I'd love to hear your feedback even later. Don't think that you can't share with me as well. All right. Let's see. Also, I'm going to check to see if I missed any of the questions, because I know you guys made a lot of comments here. So, by the way, we got everybody all over the country. This is great. All right, cool. Well, anyways, I'm sure those comments probably come in right after I hang up here. So, anyways, I'm not going to keep you guys any longer. Cash flow is king. Scott said that, which I totally agree. That's a big thing here. I know there's other comments coming in, but I'm just going to let you guys go at this point. If there's any way we can serve you, any way we can support you and help you at all, please let us know. Let us know how we can best support you and really help you guys, get to that next level in any way, shape, or form. Whether it's infinite banking, whether it's passive income. The thing is that we got the results. We've got the people that have been doing it over and over. Why not you? Why can't it be you too? So guys, make it a wonderful, prosperous day and month. And I just sign off like I'm doing a podcast. But anyways, guys, let us know how we can support you and make it a great day.